Good morning and greetings from Northumberland on a dull but dry morning. Dry so far anyway. The person on holiday is hoping for dry weather today. When I woke up this morning, I looked out, as I always do, from our bedroom window at the little coastal plain that gently slopes down to the sea here. See, I suppose less than a mile away. And I wondered as I looked up and down, how many times our saint for today rode up and down that plain? For today we remember King Oswald, King of Northumbria, whose capital was just 3 miles or so up the road, 3 or 4 miles up the road in Bamborough, in the predecessor of the great castle that sits on the rock in that village. And that was a time when Bamborough was one of the principal cities of the north. It was the residence of the king for at least part of the year, sometimes called Bebbanburg, but Bamborough was there, and it was one of the places where the king certainly spent time, and a lot of time every year. Enough of that. Oswald was born in about the year 604, 605. The dating's a little bit inexact. He lived 38 years, and for the last 8 of those years he was the king of Northumberland, maybe a kingdom stretching from the Forth to south of the Humber, incorporating what we now call the district of Lindsey, and he was the principal Anglo-Saxon king of his time. But it hadn't always been easy for him. His father had been killed by another Anglo-Saxon king, and Edwin, who was a relative, had become the king, and he, Oswald, and his family were forced to flee because their lives were not worth very much. And they went to the Scottish kingdom of Dalriata on the west coast. If you think of Iona, it's that sort of western district. And it was there that, in the influence of some of Columba's monks, that Oswald became a Christian, and not just a nominal Christian, but someone whose life was informed and whose decisions were informed by his faith. When he became king after the Battle of Havenfield, which is down near Hexham, one of the things he wished to do, according to the Venerable Bede, was to unite his people with a common faith. And so he sent back to Iona for people to come and teach the faith. The first mission wasn't very successful, but very soon Aidan and his companions came. Now, I'm not going to tell Aidan's story now because that's for later in the month, but Aidan came, and Oswald was very active in supporting them, giving them Lindisfarne just across the sea from his castle, and even translating for them as they taught the faith. And it was a short period, only 8 years, but a flowering period of Northumberland, and a period when the Christian faith really began to take hold among the Northumbrian people. And that was not, in no small part, because of the way in which Oswald lived and the example he set. He was later killed in a battle by Penda of the Mercians. His body was chopped up, and as an act of aggression, if you like, and revenge. And eventually his remains were buried at Ferton Abbey in Lindsey, Lincolnshire again. But then eventually, for those of you watching further south, they were buried at St Oswald's Priory, which is in the city of Gloucester, just behind the cathedral if you want to find it. He had an influence across the whole country for many centuries, not just during his life, but afterwards, set up as an example of being a Christian king. And although it could be interpreted that he died a martyr's death, it was the way he lived that was an example set before Christian rulers. Now, his age was very different to ours. He didn't think about the morality of going into battle and all those things. It was part of their life. But there's no doubt that his Christian faith informed the way he was to rule and what he wanted for his kingdom, which was a people united in following the way of Christ. So as we give thanks for his life today, we pray for our nation, that we may be a people united in following the way of Christ. And we pray for good, wise, and compassionate leaders for our country at this time.